Welcome to another episode of Carolina Commercial Real Estate Connection. Today we have Erik Cabral with us. Erik, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, brother. I am so happy and honored to be here, man. It's going to be fun.
We're so happy to have you. So Erik is the owner and operator of On Air Brands. And Erik, could you tell us a little bit about On Air Brands and what you guys do?
Yeah, well, we launch and produce weekly, sometimes many per week. Some typical clients like 1 to 4 episodes a week. Podcasts. That means video. So we're heavy in YouTube now, editing those podcasts and all the social media marketing promotion behind it. When it comes to not just the visuals and writing the posts, but creating the titles that are engaging, and putting all the SEO that's required, especially in YouTube. Behind all the episodes. So yeah, we've been doing that for almost 6 years now. It's about 5.5 years. So it's been a lot of fun, especially for real estate investors.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing for real estate investors to get, and especially if they're interested in getting into syndication or raising capital and bringing others into deals. You have to get a brand out there, and the easiest and smartest way to get a brand in today's environment is through a podcast, right?
Oh yeah, this is one of the, if not the only vehicle that I'm aware of, and I've been, in branding marketing for a long, long time before podcasting. To just build relationships, to start the conversation, to build trust over time. Especially now with video. In order to know, like, and trust someone quicker, you not only need to hear them. That's how it was with podcasting in the beginning. But now it's helpful to see, because now you can hear them, you can see them, get to know and love them through their ideas, their belief system, their core values. Once you get to know someone that quickly, the trust is just getting baked in.
Yeah, absolutely. You get to know someone, just listening over time, you get to see if that's kind of somebody that you align with. No matter what's going on, whether someone's just interviewing someone, talking to someone, you get the understanding of who they are as a person after listening to them multiple times, right? And so you see, do I align with this person or not? So you get to know a lot before you even talk to them a lot of times.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about podcasting as a host, like you having this show, is that you can align yourself with other bigger brands, people that are in your circle that have a lot of street credibility. You can now be associated with the communities that trust them. Because if somebody, let's just say, whether you love or hate him, Grant Cardone is on your show, people will automatically associate you with that expertise. So you can borrow other people's credibility simply by having them as a guest on your show. And then not only that, is you eventually could potentially do business with them, because now I always say the magic happens when the mics turn off, meaning that now there's deals going, there's deal flow, there's conversations, there's shaking hands and meeting barbecues and having all this fun stuff with families. Like that happens through podcasting, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to meet you through podcasting, right? I think you're an amazing person. So I'm very happy. And I feel like, that is it's just a different way of networking. Ever since the Zoom kind of has come through, I love Zoom. Half the time I don't even want to do a normal phone call. I'd rather do a Zoom so I can see who I'm talking to and kind of read them like I'm standing in front of them. It's like, you can virtually now meet with somebody. I've got a Zoom call later today with a person in Florida. So now I get to speak to them and kind of read them visually still, which is what it helps when you're face to face. That's the biggest thing. So I can kind of read those visual signs from them, which is awesome. So let me get into, when you launched this 6 years ago, what drove you to launching and getting into this?
Yeah, I'm going to rewind a little bit, and I'll try not to take too much time, Tony, that we can get into some meat and potatoes. But I left corporate America after 21 years doing creative marketing, branding, all that stuff, logo designs for a Fortune 100. And what I realized was I was miserable. After 20 years, I was heavy. I didn't have a purpose in life. It was really, the purpose was, making money. Found my wife through work. That was great. And then, party. And then it got to the point where, we were raising a family. I was like, this is it. I don't know what else is next. And I ran into a book during a drive. I had an hour and a half commute each way, brother, and it was brutal.
Holy cow.
And the mission was to lay my team off because they were shutting down what I had helped to build. So a $500,000 internal creative agency in the #1 pharma company at the time, we turned it into a $2.5 million business in less than a year. And I was like, wow, I had never done that before. I had never been an integral part of that. Like I was the creative director. So I started gaining a lot of experience in business during that time. Well, they were like, thank you, Erik, for all the hard work you did, but don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. So they were like, here's the plan, though. Lay off all your people that you hired, went from 5 people to 25 people. And they're like, lay everyone off, leave the 5 behind that was here before you got here. And then you'll have about 2-3 months to prepare and do whatever you're going to do next. So it wasn't my first time being laid off. It was actually second. Cow. Yeah, I was blessed, dude. Honestly, Tony, only 2 layoffs in 2 decades. So this is my second. So I was getting the resume ready, listening to audio books, and for some reason, the purple pill found its way through the ethernets. And I was listening to Kiyosaki. For anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, but I'm sure your audience knows it really well because it's very typical in our space. The Rich Dad Poor Dad book, when he was talking about assets versus liabilities and being financially illiterate, I realized that's what I was. All I was doing was consuming. All I was doing was spending money, and I wasn't saving. Yes, I was saving, but not to the degree where I'm going to deploy the capital and invest it and have money work for me. So I was so angry with myself. I was literally punching the steering wheel as he was talking because I was so frustrated, but I was also inspired, dude, to do something. What's next in my life? So I went home and I told my wife, I was like, guess what I'm going to do next? She's like, what? You got a new job? You're going to be in a creative? I'm like, no, a real estate investing. She's like, what are you talking about? You don't know jack crap about real estate investing. So that's what happened, dude. I took the pill. I went down the rabbit hole. I left corporate America and I started LLCs, started diving into real estate and also the bigger pockets, books. I was reading Jay Scott's books and then listening to every episode of Bigger Pockets, especially the ones in New Jersey, because I was like, I want to meet the people that are close to home. So I started asking for coffee. I didn't have a podcast at the time. I was like, hey, Matt Faircloth, let's have some coffee. And he said, yes. So I started picking his brain. He became a mentor to me. I was just watching what he was doing. So he didn't have a podcast, but he was doing YouTube stuff. And then I was starting to get involved in the local RIAs. And as I was getting more and more acclimated to this space, I realized I'm surrounded by a bunch of abundant people. Like I'm from scarcity. These guys speak differently. They're like, how can I help you? What can I do? How can I add value in your life? I'm like, what is this? Are you trying to scam me? It didn't make any sense. So I just wanted to pour into them and I started interviewing them because you know how it is in those RIAs. In the hallways, the conversations are so fascinating and inspiring. Mm-hmm. I was like, man, if only I had a microphone. So what did I do? I brought a microphone. I started interviewing people and people would say, oh, go talk to Erik on his podcast. I'm like, it's not a podcast. I was live streaming on Facebook. And but people kept calling it a podcast. So then we made it official and I became part of the RIA. They put me on the board and they were like, hey, we want you to speak on our stage. We want you to lead the Princeton, New Jersey chapter with a friend of mine, Justin. And then we just started doing all this really cool stuff, not just only creating content that looked like a podcast, seemingly was a podcast at the time, but also inspiring all the people, all the vendors that would come in. They saw it as an opportunity to like, oh, their television's here, right? They saw the lights, the cameras, the microphones, and they're like, I want to speak to Erik. They all got excited because they saw the opportunity to promote their business beyond just being there physically. They're like, oh, Erik's posting this on Facebook, on the RIA Facebook pages. So that's where it all started, dude. And one thing led to another. One person said, hey, I love your podcast. Can you do one for me? And then me became we. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. I think the whole agency is shifting to producing podcasts for real estate investors.
That's quite amazing, Erik. So this is, what I get question all the time is from people that are trying to get into real estate investing and they say, well, I don't have any value I can bring. I don't know anything. I'm new to real estate investing. So this is just, it's just mind opening to me. I'm like, Mike, this is a great idea for someone who wants to get into real estate investing, might not have any of the skills or the knowledge just because they were in a different industry. But man, if you have the courage and know how to go speak to people, you create a little niche for yourself with this podcast. All of a sudden, everybody wants to talk to you. Now, at a real estate meetup, these guys are normally looking for who can help them get real estate deals, who can help them do this, who knows, how to do the proper underwriting, who knows how to find deals. You were the guy that they all want to go talk to because you're the one that's going to help them publicize themselves, right? Create something for themselves. So you had no real estate that you're bringing, but yet everyone is going to try and find Erik, speak to Erik. I mean, what a creative, great way to create some demand for people to grab on and talk to you when you're new to that industry. That's amazing. That was a great idea, I think.
No, I appreciate that. One thing I want to add, Tony, for anyone who's listening that wants to get started, or they have gotten started, they go to those meetings and they don't really get much out of it. It's like a business card festival. But what happens is, I remember as I used to lead this chapter, we'd have anywhere between 20 to 150 people show up, depending on who was on stages or what the topic was. Wholesaling always crushed it. Everybody wanted to know about wholesaling. But the thing is, the people that stood out to me were the ones that came up to me and asked how they could help me. How can I join? How can I support you and what you're doing? I love what you're doing. How can I help you? Versus the guy, it's like, what you got? What can you give me? Take, or take your business card, walk away, or having a conversation. They're not engaged. They're looking through you to the next person that they can talk to. So the people that I noticed that followed that methodology, the best ones always went to the speakers, whoever is on stage. And that was my focus. I was like, whoever I see on stage is the one I want to talk to, because they got there for a reason and they must have a ton of knowledge. Not to say that people in the audience don't, but that person up there probably is heavy connected, right? He probably has a wealth of knowledge that I could tap into. So that's where I would suggest anyone who's getting started is like, find who's organizing the room. Maybe they're not on stage, but they're the ones that organize. They're the ones who place people to be on stages. They know a lot of people and they're connected.
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic way of looking at it. So how did you get, I know we were saying that you were moved up through that. So kind of walk us through how you navigated that and became, you said you led one. So walk us through how you networked through there. How could someone else envision doing that?
Yeah. So those events, especially the smaller ones, those local chapters, they're looking for speakers, right? So anyone who wants to step up, especially someone from the community that can promote the community and help be a living case study for others to join. That was me. So when I got my first deal, within about 8 to 9 months, I bought a multifamily, and they asked me, can you create a presentation and speak at one of the monthly meetings? And break it down what you did. So I broke down everything. I was like, network, you have to network. You have to take care of yourself. You have to create new habits. Cause a lot of guys coming in with sweatpants, I'm like, they don't seem motivated. And I'm like, no, you are your brand. This is when the branding started. I was like, you got to represent yourself in a clean way. I'm like, if you're looking for capital, do you think someone's going to trust you? Like, I'm going to give you thousands, if not tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars of my hard-earned money and savings. So, but you're wearing sweatpants, I'm like, that's not going to fly. So I had to kind of, shake them up a bit. So that was one thing, but like, I got in front of the room. That was not necessarily the full intention of our mission, but I knew that was a goal. I didn't expect it to happen so quickly. So once I got into the front of the room, and they saw that I was this dynamic guy and I was like inspiring people, they're like, why don't you just host the event? Now, I'm not saying that can happen for everyone, but at least you could be a speaker. I remember when I was running these meetings, I was always looking for members. Say, hey, what have you been doing? I would talk to everyone, and anyone who was inspiring or doing something really cool, breaking the mold, or they figured something out, like, can you speak at the next event? Or at least have them come up and say something for 10, 15 minutes. Things like that. Get into the front of the room, start networking with the people that run the organization. And then you'll basically get to the front of the line.
I think the biggest takeaway is, I mean, you have to show up. So you have to go and put yourself out there when you're trying to get into real estate, create a brand for yourself. You have to show up, right? Then you have to think, what value can I offer anyone else? No matter what this value is, I've got to create some type of value that I can offer. If you don't offer any value, you're just showing up and, like you say, grasping for everything. You're never going to get anywhere. So, you then created demand for yourself with talking to people and, getting to know them. And then everyone starts to reach out for you. So kind of walk us through how that evolved and how that led you to where you came to the podcasting world and went from there.
So when I was I think I was introducing Matt Faircloth. He was the speaker for that event. There was a future business partner in the audience with his wife. And he came up to me after the event and he was like, I came here for Faircloth, but I found you. And he said, I've been thinking about launching a podcast forever. His name's Josh McCown, GoBro, another fellow GoBundance guy. And he was like, I've got this idea, but I don't know how to get it out of me. So we started working together. I had him as a guest on my show and I got to know him. And then he was like, yes, this is a no-brainer. Let's do this. And not only do this, but can we do it together? So we created a podcast together where we were co-hosts called Capital Hacking. And what we realized, this is 2018, 2019, we launched it in 2019, is we got the likes of Kiyosaki. We got, everybody from Bigger Pockets, the C-suite and all the faces that everybody knows and loves. We just started to, all the real estate guy, radio guys, everyone who was anyone in our industry started to recognize our show because of us being dynamic and just excited about it because we were all kind of new at it. We started raising capital for deals. Like people would come to an event and go, I know you guys, I listen to you. I'm like, whoa. And then they would trust us. Right. And then they would have conversations and they would go, yeah, I want to invest. And then we just started getting more and more of this, especially when we were hosting our own events. We started to host our own Learn and Grow events for the community. If you can begin, that's a really good trajectory. Starting a podcast, building a community over time, and then offering them something else beyond it, whether it's a retreat, a mastermind, a course, something, a book. These things can happen, but you have to do it slowly. You can't just introduce it right away because you're building trust, right? You don't want to just start selling people when you're just introduced to them. So the thing is, it started to raise capital. It started to create our events, and it started to build this massive community, and eventually conferences. So it could really go far if that's how far you want to take it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. Just for instance, I was just at the real estate radio guys syndication event. So they have created a massive thing from just, being on the radio and being on a podcast. Mm-hmm. And so, somebody that's looking to get into real estate or is in real estate trying to build their brand. So what happens? Somebody has the idea, they have no idea how to do a podcast. So they want to reach out to you. Can you kind of walk through the steps of what you do to help someone and kind of guide them, and what all is involved in you taking and under your wings and taking care of them and getting them on the air?
Yeah. So we've launched dozens and dozens of podcasts over the years. But what I've noticed in reflecting on that time is the ones that are the most successful are the ones that put the work up front, the ones that have longevity, because there is a term in the industry called pod fade, where you don't get past 10 to 12 episodes because it's hard, right? Once you get it started, it's very administrative. There's a lot of heavy administrative tasks. So a lot of people, your skill sets are better than that. Like you need to go find deals, you need to shake hands, kiss babies, versus, editing your own show. So the thing is, what I want to do and what I have been doing with clients now is not only focusing on just the podcast and what you want to do with it, because you really need to be clear on what the goal is. And hopefully it's more than just making money, because the podcast doesn't necessarily make you money directly. It's not the radio industry. It's very, very, very different. because this is building a relationship with people who want to invest in you. Now with radio, that's more quantity versus quality. And the podcasting, we focus on quality of relationships. So the thing is, what I want people to do is put the work in and not just think about the podcast first, but first think about you. Like, who the heck are you? Like, do you even know what your core beliefs are? Like, what makes you special? What are you passionate about? You know, is it faith? Is it family? Is it finances? You know, whatever that is, we call core values. What are your core values? Like, figure that out first before you even start anything. Because once you figure that out, then you can create anything. You can create it all because it will be consistent because it is you. And if you haven't figured you out yet, then I say do that work first. You know, figure out who you are and what you stand for. And then once you really crystallize and have a clear understanding of what you are about, your core values, now you're consistent when you're creating these episodes, this content, these streams, whatever you're doing on social. Now people hear the same things over and over and over, which always builds trust. Because if there's consistency in your message, it's going to be clear to people what you're about when they meet you. If you're saying something but doing something else, you got to go back to the drawing board. You got to figure yourself out so that you're not contradicting yourself. So for example, like say I'm a Christian, I'm a faith-driven man, and then you're behind the scenes, you're drinking, you're smoking, you're going to strip clubs, whatever it is, right? Now people are going to go, there's a disconnect here, right?
Right.
So really understanding who you are and what you stand for first before starting any of this. And I know I'm going really deep in the rabbit hole before podcasting, but I think that from my experience and from watching others do it, figure yourself out. And to me, that is really all about personal branding. And personal branding, by definition, my definition anyway, is building your online reputation. You want to have an online reputation by building your personal brand with intention. And the intention is, I'm family, I'm faith, I'm finance, I'm whatever it is, I'm health. Find that out and stick to it for like ever, or at least for 2 to 5 years, where this is my jam. Because a lot of people start a podcast, you're like, I'm going to niche down. I'm going to be laundromats. I'm going to be mobile homes. I'm going to be whatever. They're like, no, that's like you are the brand. Don't think about that thing.
Yeah, I think online right now, it's you have to create that reputation, and it goes across multiple platforms, right? So, speak to that. Do you guys get involved in helping on all the platforms with someone who's putting a podcast together?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And then do you set the expectation? I think a lot of people think, well, I'm going to get a podcast. And I know you said the 10 to 12 episodes they burn out, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting 10,000 views, 10,000 downloads like everybody else. This is useless. I got 20 views. So, you have to be in it for the long term. So when you get a client, what's the expectation that you build with them on that? And what do you typically tell them is the time frame to expect before they're really getting somewhere?
Yeah, I always recommend at least committing to 1 year to 2 years in your mind. So 24 months, I'm committed to this. I'm not going to look at the numbers. I'm not going to look at the downloads. I'm going to continue doing what I do best. I'm going to share my knowledge with no expectation of return. Because over time, it will build an audience of people who, like I said, know, like, and trust you at this point. And you said, hey, I'm not getting 10,000, I'm only getting 20. Well, imagine this. If I said, hey, Tony, I got an event, it's an opportunity for you to speak to your audience. There's 20 to 30 people in the room. I don't know about you, but I'm saying yes to those opportunities. I will show up to a room of 20, 30, 40, 50 people who are engaged and who have been listening to me over and over each week. That's nothing to shy away from. Now, the comparison thing, it used to be an issue, but I think people now understand that, well, number one, a lot of those numbers are fake. So go to any one, including Alex Hormozy, and scroll through their feed. If you look at, just tap on the profiles and you see the profiles, if it's blank or it's private, that's fake. That's not a real profile. So there's ways where you can hack the system by buying followers. And a lot of them start out that way. They invest a lot of money to buy downloads and followers. to get the numbers up. So don't trust in the numbers. Probably 10 to 20%, I'm just making that number up, but are real people. That's where the rubber meets the road, because those are the people that are going to engage. Those are going to be people that join your community, buy your book, join the course, do the things that you want them to do. Buying numbers is not, I mean, yes, it's an ego vanity metric, truly. But what you want are the people that really truly care about you and your message. So you have to bring it. You got to bring the value, right? You can't phone it in. That's another thing, Tony. People just phone it in. They like just have the podcast. Hey, what are you doing? They just do it to do it, like it's an obligation. They're not into it. People can sense that. They know that you're not into it. So then don't do it. It's not for you. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it does take work. It's not, just you do it and it's done. It takes work like anything. But going back, even if you only have, so if you are a aspiring real estate investor and you get 20 people, you might think, oh my gosh, I only got 20 people, 10 people, whatever. But let's say those 10 people, maybe half of them say that they like you and would invest in you. Would you like the ability to have 5 people to invest in a real estate deal for you? You have none right now, right? So that gives you a fantastic opportunity, even if it's just with 5 people. Maybe those 5 people you would have never connected with if you didn't do a podcast.
100%. And if you think about it, especially in our space, 5 people investing in you, that's a $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 deal. So it makes sense for us to start a podcast because, one investor more than makes up for the production costs of a podcast. So if you think of it that way, like what am I hoping to get out of this? Well, the returns are great if you're the type, if you're someone who's raising capital or syndicating.
Yeah. And the opportunity is there. And a lot of people just, they don't have the time to invest in all these things. So they get to listen, get to know people, then can connect with people. And it's a great way to find people if you're looking to invest, right? Finding people in these podcasts, because you can get to know them, which is a great benefit of this podcast and this whole world we live in now with YouTube, which YouTube is, I mean, I've disconnected from cable now. I'm just on YouTube and Hulu.
Exactly.
Who would have thought that you used to say 10 years ago, the cable companies owned us. We're like, man, we're getting ripped off by the cable companies. Now, boy, they don't even have the football. They have nothing. they're on the outs. So, I think that YouTube is still, expanding at a rapid rate, and it's got great opportunity for anybody that's willing to put in some time and effort.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's scalable because the more content you create, think about it, one episode, we can produce probably dozens and dozens, let's say 40, 50 pieces of content from one clip. Now, that's not what we typically do all the time. We produce more than that, probably 70 or 80 clips based off one episode a week. And now think about it. It's getting to the next level where shorts, reels, stories, those vertical videos with all the B-roll, so you'll see me talking on these B-rolls, and then there'll be a clip of me in the past at a RIA, or, it's like, hey, when I was speaking at events, and then like you can actually throw in stuff that subconsciously embeds into your audience's mind. Like, oh, that's legit. Tony's not making that up. Look at him when he was 12 years old, flying on a jet or whatever, or like helping, so it's like, it's a really powerful method, especially now as things are evolving, especially like you said on YouTube. And it builds credibility while you're sleeping. It basically becomes sales while you're sleeping because other people are consuming this content when late at night, like you and I watching Hulu, watching YouTube, doing this stuff while I'm in bed. Now I'm getting to know and love you through my feed while you're sleeping. So it's pretty wild.
It really is. So let's dig. Well, that's amazing. And I appreciate you sharing all that. So you can bring someone who has no experience and walk them through the whole process so they don't have to spend 5 months figuring it out before they launch, right?
Yeah. I mean, the information's out there, information is free, but who's holding you accountable? Who's giving you the step-by-step, who's making sure that what you're doing is the right thing, because you could chase a lot of different rabbits down a lot of different holes. But who's paying attention to what your goals are so that it's customized and you're creating what you need to create. because you're starting with the end in mind. A lot of people don't think that far ahead. Like, what do I eventually want it to do? Well, I like to ask the questions, go deeper and peel the layers back. If I find out they want ultimately to have a mastermind retreat, then let's start there. Like, I literally have a client where we did the deep work, and then we launched his brand. He's putting content out there and it's working, Tony. Like, people are like, how do I join? What can I do? How can you help me? Because we've got very specific on who his avatar is, his audience, his community. Like, what is the pain point? What is the pain point? They're W-2s. They're people who have jobs that want to leave and invest. Well, let's talk to them. So now he speaks about when he was that and what he did. We tell those stories and we put that out through all the clips, shorts, B-roll. And then now we're building his mastermind community. Like, we're literally designing the community that he's going to be presenting to his audience. And now whatever he wants to charge for that, because we started with the end in mind. We knew that's what he wanted to do. Now that could be different for you, but that's what I say is find someone that can guide you through the process and peel the layers back so that what you truly want, because it's in there somewhere. Just need somebody to pull it out.
Yeah, that's really the difficult challenge for a lot of people. I mean, you really have to think far ahead. A lot of people just live day to day. They don't really plan. It's, people think that it's monotonous sometimes to plan, but if you don't plan out your goals, your long-term goals, where you want to be, where you want to go, you don't have direction. So you have to clarify the direction of what you're trying to do with so many things in life, which takes time and takes, getting alone and just kind of thinking by yourself, taking some time to sit and really dive into yourself on what it is that you want. Once you clarify that, though, then you can hit the ground running and you know right where you're going and you get there very fast.
Yeah.
So that's very awesome.
I want to share this, Tony. So, like, for example, I have friends, they're they used to be clients, but they've since moved physically. They real estate investors, and they used to put a lot of health and wellness stuff out there, mental health, physical health, all this stuff. And then we would have conversations and they'll say, Eric, people aren't asking me to help them in real estate. They're asking me like my health regimen, like my exercise routine. And I'm like, because you're putting that out there. Yes, you're doing that, but is that something you're ready to help with? Is there a program? Is there a course? Is there something that you have on the back end that you can give to them? No, but that's what I'm talking about. Like, if you plan this out and understand when you speak, people are going to hear you and think that you have the solution for whatever it is you're talking about, right? So be very cautious or be very aware of what you're sharing, because if you're speaking to a problem, people will assume you have the solution. So if you don't want to solve that, or you don't have a solve for that, then don't talk about it, even though you love it. Yet, anyway, because there's this thing called Sheehan's wall, Tony. Sheehan's wall is this proverbial wall where if you talk about one thing over and over and over, let's say Amazon, books, right? In the 90s, the early 2000s, we only knew Amazon as books. Gary V only talked about wine. Nobody knew him outside of the wine industry. And then they broke through this Sheehan's wall, and then they could speak about everything. They spoke about one thing, and then eventually you could speak about anything, because everybody knows you for this one success. Now you can go talk about all the other things, because now you have capital, now you have time, you have resources to go help them in all these other things. So I just want people to be aware of that. As us, the little guys starting out, focus on one thing. I know it's hard, but do that until you break through the wall. And then you can start talking about health, fitness, mental, blah, 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 all the things.
You're breaking my brain here. You're giving me a lot of information. This is awesome, Eric. So, I mean, I'm sure other people are like me. It's just you're taking it back. You're very clear, and this is the type of guidance that you'll bring a client if they come to you and they're looking to get started. These are questions that you really need to ask in order to do anything. And this is critical. This is a real estate show, and this is all based on somebody who wants to get into real estate. This is a whole nother avenue, right? This is a way to differentiate yourself, way to create some demand for yourself, and a way to get into the industry. That's why we're talking about it. I think it's amazing. I'm so happy that I was able to get you on today and find out all about this. So if people wanted to reach out to you and find out how to get started, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have something for your audience. If they go to my website, erikcabral.co/guide. So it's my name, ErikCabral.co/guide. I have the top 21 tips. There's actually more, but it's a good number to help you either as a podcast host or as a guest. And the biggest value that I can add truly is my time. So there's actually a link there. So if you wanted to book a free discovery call, we could do that.
That's awesome, Eric. And I speak firsthand. Eric is about the most genuine person I've come across in a long time. So very kind person, would be very easy to speak to. And he makes you feel welcome and at home within about 2 minutes of knowing him. So, I recommend anybody who's listening that has any thought of even thinking about doing this to reach out to him. Go to Erik Cabral. And that's ErikCabral.co/guide, and check that out and reach out to him and try and connect. And Eric, thanks so much for joining us today and telling us a bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Tony. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Have a great day, man.
You too.